Hey everybody, welcome to the Road to Real Estate podcast. I'm John, and as always, we have the amazing Lauren.
Hey guys.
Today we're going to do the top 10 neighborhood qualities that add value. Before we get into it though, I'd love to see everybody like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the stuff. We'll show you our title screen right now.
Welcome to the Road to Real Estate podcast, where John and Lauren help you grow your real estate business. Enjoy the show.
And before we get into the top 10 things that add value, Lauren's got a disclaimer for us because, as always, a lot of these are up to the individual.
Yeah, so as a real estate agent and a realtor, there are some things that we are legally allowed to advise you on, and there are some things that we are not legally allowed to advise you on. However, they are still really important things that add value to your neighborhood. And so when we get to those things, we'll let you know this is a you job, not the agent's job, which makes a big difference because you're going to need to do things like neighbor shopping and like shop shopping. Like, what are the stores around there? Do they align with you? And there's not one set answer. It's how do you want to live and what's your standard? Because looking at something even like crime rate, you're going to have a different standard if you're in an urban area compared to suburban, compared to rural. And so those are your standards that you set for you and your family, whatever your family looks like. And you just have to know that going in. So there's several of those we'll repeat over and over again, but make sure that you are doing your due diligence on what is right yourself.
Yes. It's important to note that Georgia is a buyer beware state, so it's up to you to do this research. And because of Fair Housing Act and all the laws we did to make things equal, if we were to give you that information, it would be considered steering, or it could fall into a number of categories.
And in this day and age, it's just a good practice not to assume that your values or my values are your values, that we don't always align and we're not always looking for the same thing.
Yeah, we're not the same people, so.
And even a word like diversity can mean something so different to everyone. And so for somebody to say, I'm looking for diversity, that may not mean the same thing from person to person. And so this is where your search comes in and where your job as the future buyer, future owner needs to really stand out.
Of course. So with that being said, let's get into number one. I think this one's probably the most famous one. Everyone's heard it a million times. It's location. And everyone everywhere has gone location, location, location. Because obviously once you buy a house, it doesn't move. It's where it is. So choosing the right spot really and then once again, this is actually up to the buyer, because nowadays we have people that work remotely. So for them, being further out and away from everything may be what they want. Some people want to be close to their work or their employment, centers of schools. There are a million different things location-based that kind of sell us or dissuade us from buying a property. What makes that more valuable is going to be up to the individual. Obviously, everyone knows that as you go into a major city center, things tend to get more expensive, or near the ocean, they tend to get more expensive. But, bodies of water will do that because of people think of the recreation and the view, How would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I even lived in a state where your elevation made a difference. If you were at the bottom of the hill, actually, I lived in two different places. In San Francisco, when I lived at the bottom of the hill, it was a fog bank. So the fog was there most of the time, and the values were a little bit lower. When I lived in Tennessee, the higher you went on the hills, right? These weren't in the mountains, these were in like the hills. You got more expensive pricing. So there can be influences like that are super local to that area that change all the time. But there's other things that you need to think about, like, what school system do you want to be in? What's your commute look like? Commute, depending on where you are, Atlanta has a lot of commute problems. And so knowing what your commute looks like, what highways you're taking, what areas you're going to, that is the location that for me in our state makes such a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
And that really steers a lot of people's searches.
Yeah, and that also changed drastically during the pandemic too, because prior to the pandemic, the work from home thing, it existed, but not to the level that it did now. So I felt like location is still number one, don't get me wrong, but it's reduced a little bit because of, I mean, people used to have to be near work. Everyone had to be near work. You had to be able to commute. So there were whole cities and towns that were missed because they didn't have the employment opportunities that now people can move near them and be like, it doesn't matter. I can live here because I'm just going to sign into a computer. And I like everything else about this area. And since I work 5 states away, it's okay.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on it later, but one of the builders in Atlanta has really realized this, that people are only having to commute into their office maybe once or twice a month, a week, a year. I don't know. There's different requirements. And so they are creating neighborhoods further out with very large amenity packages and really pushing that lifestyle. Like it's more about when you come out here, we have your whole
Yeah,
lifestyle
exclusive,
here.
like your own little resort.
So that can make a big change in location and how you view your location.
And we're going to touch on location as we go through the rest of these because I think all of these are going to relate to location. You know, that's just what it is.
That's why it's number one, right?
Yes, that's why it's number one. Number two is one of the ones the disclaimer is going to be safety and crime rates. Obviously, this is something that's important when you're looking to buy the house, and you know they have those colored maps and stuff you can look up on your own. It's important to see what those crimes are too, because what will end up happening if you do your research, you'll be like, oh, it's in a rough area, end quote, in my air quotes for the people that are on Spotify. And you look it up, and it's like you can see that there's one house in that community that must have a teenager that's rebelling or whatever. You can see because you can see what that stuff is. So it's important to see what that individual stuff is, what's causing those rates, and determine for yourself. Your realtor can't tell you if that's something that you're okay with, or you feel like you need to look in a different area. But obviously it's a very important thing to look into when you're buying a home and see what that stuff is, because some of the stuff might obviously make you choose elsewhere. And say it that way, you know.
And I think that, something falls into this category as well. I mean, looking at the websites to see what the crime reports are and what the percentage is really important. And that's your job, not your realtor's job. However, I do think that there's a term that I've coined. I don't know if anybody else calls it this, but I call it neighbor shopping, right? The time that you go and see the house with your realtor is one specific point of time in the day. You might see other people out, you might not. Everybody might be at work, everybody might be home. I don't know if you're seeing it on the weekends or on a Tuesday or in the evening or in the morning, but it changes what you're going to think about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you, especially if you know an area or a neighborhood that you're looking for, even if you haven't found the right house, you want to drive through there on the weekend. What does it look like? If you're a runner, you might be looking for other people running. Like, are people exercising? Are people out walking? You might want to see, like, oh, are there people with strollers? Are there kids playing in the yard? This is neighbor shopping. This is on you. This is not for the realtor. This is what you're going to do on your own because you know what your standard is. Maybe you're retired and you're looking for other people your age. That's totally fine. For whatever you're looking for, you want to just go through and see if you see those kind of people. This is that neighbor shopping. The other thing is if you're really particular and you know what you don't like, if you're not interested in loud music or you're looking for a quieter place and you hear a lot of cars going back and forth, these are things that you may not be able to see on paper anywhere. You're going to have to experience. So go to the property in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. Go to the property in the evening. Go on the weekend. Do things so that you can make sure that you see a full picture of what's happening.
This one's not related to crime, but I've lived in places growing up in different areas, and my thing is, once you live in an area for a while, you get used to the area. But when I was younger, we got this nice new house right off of Southern and Belvedere, where it was me and 4 buddies that rented it together, and turns out that it was right near the airport, and all the planes flew by, and they flew by close to the point where we were having a conversation on the phone where, hold on, there's a plane coming. You're not going to hear anything. We didn't know that when we checked the place out because no planes went over while we were there, and we didn't do our due diligence to stay in that house or look at it. And so we were locked into a 1-year contract with this house where it's like, planes were really close. And, several times a day, it was like there's no communication or you can't hear the TV because they were just on top of your house, And also a couple of years ago, I mean, we knew we were only temporarily renting a place, but we were there for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden a train came through and the whole house shook, and you get used to it living there, but the first couple times it happens, you're like, ooh, whoops.
Mhm.
So it's
Well,
important to know that stuff.
and the thing about train tracks, and not everybody knows this, but trains do not run on a regular schedule.
Yeah.
Ever since 9/11, the schedules are not posted, and they intentionally vary the schedule so that the trains can't be tracked. So if you do happen to live near a train track, it's not going to be at 2 a.m. every Friday. Like it's varied, and so you don't know when those are going to be.
Yeah. Awful location again. Let's go right on to number 3. We have the quality of schools. Obviously, anyone that's got children, it's important for your kid to go to a good school. And at least with my wife, it was really important that we live in an area that has a good school.
Yeah, schools are super important. And in fact, they're so important that in most areas, they affect the value of the property. And so it is not uncommon that in the best school districts, there's a premium for the houses there. So where do you find that information? Your realtor might be able to give you some generic or overarching information, but specific school information, first go to the county that school is located in. Look at the schools. We have a county here, Gwinnett County, has a school report on every single school. And what that school report tells you is it tells you the scores. What are the scores for their school? How's it compared to the state of Georgia? How many employees are hired? How many teachers are hired? What degrees they have? It also will tell you what the racial diversity is, how many kids are on free and reduced lunch. It will let you know where the school scored within the county. And it gives you all of this information just by going to the school's website. So go to the county level that you're looking at and look and see if they have those same school reports for the schools. Also, there's some third-party companies. I really love schooldigger.com. I feel like that's a great one. Another one is greatschools.org. And I'm sure there may be a few others that are really good out there, but just get some information.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good to figure that out. In both the area that I live in and John lives in, we have great school districts. And so you get to the point where a lot of the schools all fall into the great category, and you can talk to people and it's kind of splitting hairs. This one's a little better this year. It keeps going back and forth. But when you look at it, just keep an open mind that people really typically like their schools, number one. But in addition to that, there's a lot of different ways to value a school, and make sure that however you're valuing it fits with your values.
Of course. And to add on to this is something that we encounter when we're doing our CMAs, which is how we look at properties side by side in the real estate industry. And it would be weird because you'll see this side of the street and this side of the street, same builder built within the same year, and this house is more expensive than that house. And you're going through and you're looking at the layout and you're like, man, this is the same, what's going on? Chances are there's probably a school line dividing those two, and that's why the value is different. So you can either get a bargain deal by going, hey, you know what, we're not so into the school rating, maybe, for whatever reason, and that might be a plus for you to save a couple of bucks and buy the house across the street if it's not that big of a deal for you. Whereas other people will look at it and go, you know what, my kid's right in that range, and I really want to go to a good school because I want to go into a good college, and they'll just buy the house on the other side of the street because to them that's what they find is important for them in their life, So yeah. It's very important to see that stuff. And like I said, Georgia's different than any place I've been because the way they do their school lines in the districts and the way they divide them, they'll split a neighborhood right in half, which is something I wasn't used to until we moved here. It's like two houses on the same street on opposite sides. Even though the bus goes through the same entrance to get to those houses, there are two different school systems. So it's something to keep in mind, especially when you're in this area,
And, depending on where you are, sometimes it's hard to change schools that you're zoned for. We do have a process for it in Georgia, but you're not guaranteed the school that you want, and you have to provide transportation for your child if you're going out of district or out of the school that they're zoned for. And so you have to realize that there's a lot of weight on schools, even if you don't have kids. There's a lot of weight on schools because I did a really fun maybe statistics value project one time where I looked at all the high schools in the North Fulton region, and what was their highest price and what was their lowest price and what was their median price. If you've heard me talk before, I like median price when it comes to houses, not average price. And so the median price, and it was very, very interesting because the school district that had the most highest priced houses also had some of the lowest priced houses, and they were right in the center of the median category. But then the other neighborhoods were only in the high, only in the low. And the information that it gave me is when you're going into an area, let's say if your average price point, like the price point you were going for was about $750 is what you could afford to buy for a house, you maybe don't want to live in an area where that's the least expensive house. A lot of people want to be in the middle somewhere, right? So would you want to go? And this is a personal choice.
Around you to be in the same bracket as you would.
Yeah, it's a personal choice. It's not necessarily right or wrong. But would you want to be in a school where $750 is where the pricing of the houses start and the average is over $1 million? Or do you want to be in an area where that $750 is the most expensive house and everybody is more the $500 is the average, or vice versa? Do you want to be at $750 and there's people with $500,000 houses and $1 million, but you're kind of in the middle? And it's a personal question. It's not right or wrong, but it's great for me as a realtor because that way I can tell people like, hey, I don't think there's any houses in your price point in this area with the amenities you're looking for. So if you want to be in this area, we need to change your criteria or change your price.
Yeah.
And if you can't do either of those, then we can't look at the school district. And it's not that I'm trying to steer them like we talked about steering before. It's that I'm being realistic with what's available on the market in that area.
Okay. And so the next one we have is something we actually touched on a little bit, is community amenities, which has changed. This is a pandemic change thing. I mean, some of the stuff has happened before. I think with HOAs and stuff, we've had growing pools and gyms and stuff like that. But things have definitely stepped up a notch since the pandemic in terms of building. I mean, in Florida, we have whole cities that were man-made strictly to keep people within that city. Outside of Naples, we have where the builder said, here's the deal. There's no town here. There's nothing here. And they literally built the square and a town and all the housing as one development, as one thing. And it's just like all your grocery shopping is, like everyone in that community has a golf cart. You don't even need a car, so, I mean, it's a next level. It's like its own little resort and it's their thing. And it's called Ave Maria. And
I thought we were talking about the villages.
Huh? Nope. It's Maria's. The villages is outside of Orlando.
Yeah, I know where that is.
But it's like this little man-made, doesn't exist. You're in the middle of nowhere, and then this town. It is kind of crazy, but yeah. So it's a thing that builds now. I know we have them coming up everywhere, and it's not necessarily to that scale or that size, but even smaller communities are having more for their people that live there.
Yeah, and we saw this as COVID hit, that people really wanted to have a lifestyle built around their house, right? They wanted, whatever their home was, they wanted their community to have amenities. And so were those elevated swim and tennis. We're in Georgia, we love swim and tennis. That's a buzzword in our neighborhoods. But, now do we want to have the splash pad in addition to the pool for the kids? Are we looking at pickleball courts and tennis courts? Is there a playground? Are we going to have walking trails? A dog park, that became really huge during COVID, having a dog park in your neighborhood. And off leash is a thing now, right? Everyone wants their dog to be able to be off leash. And so having that space within your community allows you to just live and play right there, not having to leave the community. And there's been a huge interest in all of this. And I do think that when we look at community amenities, sometimes we're talking about just what's in your neighborhood, but it's also talking about the infrastructure of the county or city that you're living in. One of the things that we see is that certain counties, like our Gwinnett County here in Georgia, has a very strong infrastructure. They have aquatic centers, parks, recreation centers, indoor, outdoor, all the things. And they have a very highly, highly developed recreation and parks department. And so if that's something that is really important to you, to have that large green space more than just in your neighborhood, just know where those are. Close to Jonathon, there's an amazing facility that has like an aquatic center, like a world-class baseball. The kids who like do baseball in that field are known for going to like the World Series. and all of that. They're really great baseball facilities, and there's a library there. There's all kinds of amenities right beside Jonathan's house, and that is a specific area where those community amenities are very easy to access. Not all areas of his county have that level of amenities, and so know if you're looking, just within your neighborhood, but also the larger municipality or county around you, what they have to offer as well.
Mm-hmm. And the next one, this is going to be more of a city dwellers thing, is we go into public transportation. Obviously, if you live in a very rural place, not likely to have a bus stop near you or a metro or a subway. So, but anyone that lives in an urban setting, having access to public transportation, because as you know, when you get into more city-based, taking your car isn't always the best because parking's always A, unavailable, B, expensive, especially in Atlanta. Atlanta's got some of the most expensive parking of any place I have ever been. It's consistently $50. It blows my mind. Anytime we go down to the downtown, it's like, we're spending $50 to park a car. So if you have the ability to get from your house to whatever you're doing for that evening or whatever event, and you can hop on, for us, it's the MARTA, but Subway or the T if you're in Boston, to get to where you're going for a couple of bucks and not have to worry about finding parking and walking 3 blocks once you find parking anyways. It's definitely a huge plus. Also, for people that are just outside the city, to be able to get into the city if you work in city and you don't want to drive, it can be a huge plus to have that access to that. Obviously, some people aren't going to want that, but it can be a huge positive depending on your lifestyle choices.
Yeah. I mean, Atlanta is known for having not great public transportation. That's just, our city was just built with lots of cars, and we drive everywhere. We love our cars in Atlanta, but other cities is very, very, very important. So think about how that affects you and how close or far you want to be from it.
So I'm going to give a brief history lesson. It could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Atlanta doesn't line up like other cities because the way it worked is different rail owners own different sections of the city, and their rails would go out in different angles. So it's kind of like a pie-shaped city but it's divided by and based around the railroad tracks coming in and out of the city. So you can, when you're driving around Atlanta, it's not like driving around other cities where it's like this road goes this way. A lot of cities use a grid system. That's not Atlanta. So getting around Atlanta can be frustrating if you don't know. It's just what it is. It's not like a modern city. We don't have a tunnel system with a subway or anything like that, like up in Boston or New York or even Chicago. We just don't have those. But it is what it is. They're trying. We have a MARTA.
Yes, we've had MARTA for a while, but the reality is that it's a very spread out city. We're one of the largest by landslides. We're very sprawled when you look at the city limits of Atlanta, and so yeah, it is what it is. We're far away.
Yeah. So I guess we'll move on to the next one. There's not a lot for us here. So the plans for the future. What does your local city council have planned out? Because obviously, if anyone's dealt with any zoning, they zone out the whole layout of your town and they mark certain areas for certain things, whether it be residential or commercial or industrial, and they work on those maps over time. And it's good to know what they're planning for the future for your city, because if you're going to buy there, hopefully you're thinking long term. And if you're thinking long term, what's your city going to look like in 10 years? What kind of things are they developing for you as the community living and working in the city? Are they going to put a huge arena for an NFL team there in the next 2 years? Is that something you're looking forward to or not looking forward to? Knowing what's going to happen in the future around you. Obviously, I mean, we ran into this. I always have these experiences. We bought in a neighborhood, and there was a small strip between us and the major highway, which is 95 in South Florida. And it was always empty, and it was always grassy, and it'd been there forever. And we bought our house, and we knew that grass was there. Well, while we lived in that house, a commercial company bought it and ended up being a used store type place. And they put a huge RV and boat facility between us and the highway. And there was no access to that unless people drove those cars and vehicles through our little neighborhood. So what was a quiet little neighborhood with everyone running in the streets turned into, on the weekends, 8 million boats and RVs coming in and out of there, driving through the neighborhood, which was not designed for that at all. But it was their only access because they needed access to get over the railroad tracks that were backing there, because it went highway, the stripper land, railroad tracks, and then it backed up to the back of our neighborhood. And it was one of those things like, it's too expensive to build our own access over the railroad tracks and put in all the lights and stuff, so they used our neighborhood to get there, and we had a huge fight with the town, lost, and that's what it is. So
No, it's super hard. And sometimes it's so easy to see what's there. It's hard to think about it changing. I
mm-hmm.
see people who buy something and they go, "Oh my gosh, look, we have our neighbor. It's a farm and there's rolling green hills and look, there's a cow and there's a cute little barn over there. My kids can feed the horse apples on the weekend." And they have this really beautiful plan in their mind where Farmer Joe might pass away and his family decides to sell the land, and suddenly there's houses there, and
Yeah.
and people get upset and people get their feelings hurt. And so looking at what the future development plans are, or understanding what the county's goal is. We have a county, Forsyth County, that was known for giving very few building permits
Mm-hmm.
until COVID, and that was the easiest county to build in from 2012 until 2025, like right now. And what happened is now they've really pulled back on building permits and they are really limiting it. And so if you know that your building permits are wide open and that your county really gives building permits very easily, you need to be aware that the land around you may get developed. Or on the flip side, if you have an area that maybe has really high building standards. At one point in my life, we lived in a city that required 1 acre of land per house built for
Mm-hmm.
every builder. And that really limited the building opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowed down the process. And they kept this very bucolic, very, very kind of old feel because everybody had a large yard and so many trees were required. And so just know whatever the zoning requirements are in your area, that is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Are townhouses allowed? Are zero lot lines allowed? What does that look like, and are you okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We run into a situation here. Another one. We bought a house with a huge garage in the back, which we love and we use every day. But now our parents are getting older, so we started looking into turning it into an in-law suite. Well, in this town, in this county, that's not really an option. We can't get the permits to do it because of the way the town is set up. So as our plans changed, granted, that wasn't what we originally wanted that building for, but as time changed, our decisions on how we run our life changed, and it's like, oh, well, that's not really an option here. So we move on,
Yeah, and I expect that's a great point, John, because I expect that we're going to see laws changing as more parents and more households are becoming multi-generational. We trended away from that for the past 20 years, and we're kind of trending back towards it now. We're seeing more and more people wanting multi-generational housing. We're seeing that secondary dwelling becoming way more popular. We're seeing she sheds and granny pads, and all these things are popping up as we're hearing words like barn dominium. And
Well, I like that.
yeah, and so you're finding all these words pop up that we didn't have before, and the whole thing is that people's styles are changing, and whereas a modular or a manufactured house used to only be considered a trailer, now our minds are open to other versions of modular and things, and so hopefully there'll be some additional opening up of those, and you can always get a variance, but it's important to know what they are before you buy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the next one, number 7.
Oh, yeah. Walkability. We've kind of touched on this one on the earlier ones because we're building this into our things, and it's something that towns are planning for too. A lot more towns are actually closing off streets to do little cafes and stuff and restaurants, and built into the design and changing the zoning to allow for that. It's become really, really popular. It's a great way for people to generate money. And on top of that, I think us as a culture, at least in the U.S., we're getting so used to everything being here now, and we can blame the pandemic, we can blame Amazon, we can blame whatever. But for whatever reason, getting getting into the car and going for a ride to do everything gets less and less exciting, and it'd be just nice to just walk over there and grab dinner. You know what I mean? Or have
Mm-hmm.
amenities that are just, you don't have to drive everywhere. Now, as a kid, we drove everywhere. And I don't know, with time and the way we're developing things, it's like being able to walk over to the and get sushi. It's pretty awesome. And I'm not going.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, I think it's a value change within people and culture, because for the longest time having a car was a status symbol, right? Even probably when we were kids, John, was not abnormal for a family to only have one car.
Mm-hmm.
And so two cars were a status symbol. And so driving meant that, that you had the ability to. Well, that's no longer an anomaly, right? Cars are more like the standard at this point, especially if you're in a suburban or rural area compared to urban. But it doesn't have the novelty. What I hear from clients is, I don't have to be able to walk to everything, but I'd love to be able to walk to a park. I'd love to be able to walk to a coffee shop or a bagel place or maybe a restaurant. They're not trying to walk their whole lives. I don't see people walking to the grocery store for their full week of groceries. We still like the convenience of cars. But I do have people that want to be close to a shopping area that has a nice outdoor space,
Mm-hmm.
a coffee shop that seems to everyone wants to walk to coffee. That's such a big deal right now. And just having somewhere where they can walk to do things. And the park is just beyond that. It just creates a whole different level of community when you can walk to your park.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are really excited about that. And I see counties and municipalities responding to that, and they're building smaller parks that are closer in. They're calling them pocket parks. I don't know if you know this, Jonathan, but they're called pocket parks. And as they find areas where there's probably not a good space for a house, or there's a swamp area where you really can't build, we're seeing the city come in and buying out the area and creating walking trails. We have a wonderful program called the Greenways, and it starts in like that Alpharetta Roswell area, and it goes all the way north, and it's a wetland. Nobody can build on it anyway. They've reserved it for nature to live there, and they built this 10-foot wide path for biking, walking, rollerblading. You see a lot of rollerbladers on there, and just an area where people can access this. And this goes for, I think, 25-30 miles. Or the Silver Comet Trail is a wonderful example of that. It's a biking trail that goes from Georgia to Alabama that people cycle on. And so I think that walkability means a lot and increases that community appeal, because you can get to places where you can enjoy where you live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely have gotten more into going outside. I think everyone got more inside, more inside, more inside. Then ever since the pandemic, people were like, having a place to just unwind and get some fresh air. And that's why we had I don't want to say a max exodus, but a lot of people moved from the more urban area into a more suburban and rural areas to just be able to have that space to relax and let loose a little bit. But then having those areas where it's like, I want to be out here, but a little convenience is really good too. And it's like combining, like having some of those features from what people are used to in a more urban area, and having some of that, but not all of that, is really cool.
Yeah, agreed.
And the next one is another one we have a disclaimer on. This is diversity and inclusion. As realtors, we can't tell you who lives in a certain area and whether it's a good idea to buy in that area or not buy in that area.
Based on the people, right? We can tell you based on numbers of what a house is sold, but based on the people.
Yeah. We don't get involved in ethnicity and religion. That is up to you and your research. And whether you want more diversity or less diversity is 100% up to you. Diversity and inclusion is one of the things that affects value. And that's, like I said, all depends on the environment you want to be in and you want your family to grow in. And that's 100% personal choice,
Yeah, and as a trend for buyers, something that I had not heard until probably about 5 years ago was the diversity of the school. that parents were really seeking out, that was a question, along with, what does the school rank at, what are the test scores, where are they within the state boundaries, but how much diversity is in the schools. That it's really become a something that I keep hearing on people's wish list, that they're
Mhm.
looking for more diversity. Being in a place like Atlanta, we have we call it the largest airport in the world. I don't know. I think we kind of,
The world's busy.
O'Hare and us, that kind of, we go back and forth, but we're the busiest. We have the most flights out. And so we are a place where a lot of people come from a lot of different cultures. And, we're very diverse, but everybody defines it differently.
Mhm.
Different areas, different states, different cities. Diversity means something different. It
Mhm.
meant something different to you in South Florida than it means to you now in Atlanta, right?
Mhm.
And if you're to go up north, it means something different there. And if you go to the West Coast, it means something different there. And so
Mhm.
knowing what you're looking for is really important.
I will say, that was one of the coolest things is when we first moved up to this area. I never studied Atlanta. I didn't know nothing about Atlanta. I had no idea the airport what it was, and because of, I mean, it obviously started with the railway. It was a hub for that, and then that got brought in with Delta being here and our airport. So when you get into Atlanta, there are the major hubs for so many huge companies within Atlanta because it's what they call it, the hub of the world. So there are companies I've never heard of that have a major office here, but that company is based out in another country. But it's just easy for them to get to Atlanta, and they can get everyone there to meet in Atlanta. You can meet in Atlanta, and so it's really cool to see major companies from all over the world have representation here in this city because it's just easier because of the airport, you know.
Yeah. And the other little known fact about Georgia is that Savannah has the busiest port on the East Coast.
Mm.
And we are a direct connection to the airport, and so it winds up being a very good place to do business. And you're right, it's not something you hear LA, New York, you hear all these other places, but we're a very accessible location. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that creates a lot of diversity. I know when I moved to California just out of college, I grew up here in the South, and we celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and I thought it was a national holiday. I thought everybody did, but I went out to the West Coast, and they celebrate Cesar Chavez Day, which I had never been taught about. Maybe just a blurb in my history lesson, but it was definitely not a day that we took off. But instead of MLK Day, they took off Cesar Chavez Day, and so it was very eye opening for me that not everybody even celebrates the same holidays or has the same days off. I was talking to somebody recently from South Florida, and they had a different culture there, and they took off totally different days
Mm-hmm.
than what we take off up here. And so I think that's important to know. What is standard where you're going may not be the same as what was standard where you came from.
Yeah, oh
So
yeah.
find out
In
what's
Pennsylvania, you
around
get
you.
the first day of deer season off.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Right? So like
It's
it's
like
a thing.
what? Like, and then they moved to Connecticut and like deer season. They don't even know when deer season is. It's not a thing, you know. It's a
Yeah.
whole different atmosphere, you know. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, and I think that, I think there's a lot of examples of this. I think that, just up the street from me is a synagogue, and the real estate right around it, or walkable distance, has an increase of value because people are looking to be able to walk there,
Mm-hmm.
but on certain high holy holidays. There's down the street, there's a giant Catholic church with a private school, and it has a draw of people that want the private school and want that small school experience, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a draw, right? There's different things that have draws in different areas, and you have to be just aware of it and what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like we said all throughout this podcast, what is right for you may not be right for the next family or person looking to buy, and everyone's got different values in what they seek and what they want for them and their lives. So every one of these, we can go, hey, this adds value, and person was like, well, not to me, you know. So every one of these is one of those things where five of these might be great for you and five may not. You know, it's everyone be different and look for different things in a home, and that's part of this business. You know, finding out what's good for your client, your customer, for them. The next one we've already touched on quite a bit, but it's a topic all on its own, and that is natural beauty. And natural beauty can be beaches, mountains, stuff. Your view when you look out your door or window. Trust me, a house with a really good view is going to have it as a selling point. After we moved to where we currently are, the wife and I were driving. I don't know where we were, but basically there was enough traffic that was rerouting us to 75, and we came up over this hill, and it was all greenery and beautiful. But as you looked out, you could see all of Atlanta, and it was just a stunning view. And we immediately went, "Wonder if we can buy a house here." Like we saw the view, and it was like, "Wow, okay, this is neat. We can see the whole city." And I've been here now, 2 years in this house.
Uh-huh.
And I've not seen that view again. I have no idea how we found that view. I don't know what
You were
we
in
were
like
on.
Cumberland. You were in the Cumberland Smyrna area. That's where you
Yeah,
were.
it was just one of those things that just came up over the hill. I was like, wow, all right. But that's
Yeah.
something that sells that area, having that view. Obviously, part of that is going to be parks and conservation areas in an area for your natural beauty and scenery. And like I said, for every person, that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, and I would include in this, your neighborhood. If you are buying new construction, and maybe this is different where you are, but in our area, new construction typically means very few established trees. Unfortunately, the building style right now is basically clear cutting the trees and reshaping the land in order to get the water drainage to be correct according to today's water drainage standards. And there's not established trees, and typically, not all the time, but typically the lots are smaller. And I think this is really important because established neighborhoods are going to have an older style house. You might need to renovate, but you're going to get a bigger lot and mature trees and a lot more green space in Atlanta, not everywhere. And so you have to figure out, is that green space, and is that the neighborhood you're looking for, right?
I will say this as well. We keep jumping into Atlanta. Atlanta is known as the city in the trees. You drive in Atlanta and you go from skyscrapers to wooded areas, and you're still in Atlanta. It's amazing how quick it turns into these little twisty roads and trees everywhere. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we are noted for our trees. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have a lot of trees, and
for
when you fly in, you really see it. It looks like skyscrapers sticking out of like broccoli. It's
yeah,
really kind of funny.
there's a lot of greenery in and around Atlanta, which is good. Also, as trees get older, sometimes you got to take them down because your house is at risk. We had the first house we bought in Georgia. And my wife's like, "Look at all these trees." I was like, "Well, they're all uphill from this house. If we get a good storm in here." So we ended up taking 13 out, and then we had a storm come through and take out another 8. So, yeah. So, good and bad on trees. Make sure you've got good, healthy trees around. And you obviously don't want them falling on your home. But they are good to look at until you have to rake leaves. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, that feels like trauma, Jonathan. Do we need to talk about this?
Yeah, I try to mow over them a little bit. I know, like, the worst part is my yard's finally starting to come together. I got a couple of patches to fix, and I'm like, man, we're getting to fall already. It's already about to jump August. I was like, oh my goodness, here we go.
Yeah.
They're fun for a
Fun
week. You want to take topic 10?
Yeah, well, number 10, it's, this encompasses a lot of the things that we already talked about. This is community engagement, right? So this is talking about your neighborhood, your HOA, the city you live in, the county you live in, what are the shopping centers near you, like what to do. This is your community engagement. Like, how do you like to live? Do you like to go to live music? Do you like to go to the park? Do you want to live in a homeowners association where there are rules about how the height of your grass and what color your house can be? Like, how do you want to live? And so this is how you want to engage with your community.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on this one specifically on HOAs. They're not for everyone, but also when you're buying a house, it's really, really important, especially if your home is in an HOA area, to go over the bylaws of the HOA, see what is allowed, see what's not allowed, and see if that fits your lifestyle. Because there are some extremely strict HOAs, and then there are some HOAs that are a little bit more lenient, and depending on you as a person, some of that's a better fit than others. I've lived in HOAs that have been fine. I've lived in HOAs that have been terrible. So knowing before you buy, that information is usually available before you can put an offer, and you can get that information on an HOA. Mm-hmm. And it's really important. It's a pain to read, but it's definitely worth getting a feel for it because HOAs have a lot of power, and that's up to you on what you're looking for in a neighborhood and in an HOA. So it's very important to read through what they're offering you and what their bylaws are.
100%, Jonathan. I think you hit the nail on the head. The HOA, not all states do they have as much power, but we've been in 2 states like Florida and Georgia where they have a lot of power. Mm-hmm. And we're watching a situation right now unfold in downtown Atlanta where, as pricing has increased during COVID, just overall the pricing, the HOAs in the condo associations are having to charge more money because their taxes went up. Mm-hmm. And we're getting to a point where HOA fees are now more expensive than mortgages in these specific places. And you guys have a different version of this in Florida because of your concrete problem, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is that a condo that, even though the price is affordable to buy, the HOA is not affordable to join. Mm-hmm. And so people are not buying these condos and they're sitting on the market, and it's going to start to affect the price. Mm-hmm. And in a neighborhood with houses, there are still HOAs and they are still very powerful. And we're seeing, some get worse, some get better. But it's really something you need to be aware of if you're buying. Mm-hmm. And when you buy in a neighborhood, before you sign the contract, ask for what we call them the CCRs, mm-hmm. right? And those are the regulations that control the entire neighborhood, and you're going to be held to those standards. Yeah. They can put liens on your property. They do have the legal right to do that. We call them nasty grams in my neighborhood. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll get a nasty gram like, oh, your mailbox needs to be cleaned or things like that. And we kind of joke about it, but it also keeps our neighborhood up to a certain standard.
Also, it's important to note that when you pay off your house, the HOA payment does not go away. So you have to put it into yourself financially, knowing that, hey, this is a number that can increase because what happens is things get more expensive. They reassess things. That monetary value can change. And it's for the life of you living on that property. So if you're thinking you can get in, and especially if I would say this as people age and get older, when you're on a fixed income or you're on a retirement budget, it's something to consider versus if you buy a home outright and all you're paying is property taxes, then it's a little bit more free and clear than if an HOA or condo where you have a fee that's going to still be a monthly thing. And then if you're close on your payments, and they do a special assessment, and that makes it so it's unaffordable, it's important to understand that that's a possibility.
Yeah, and that's very true as we look even into the baby boomers aging into these senior facilities. I'm seeing more and more cases where, the HOA fees are really, really, really high because they're offering things like a full-time nurse available, mm-hmm. or some kind of health amenities, or much more elevated levels of service like activities coordinators and a physical therapist on staff. And they are coming with these very large HOA payments or very large monthly payments to the HOA. And it's causing a much faster drain on the account than someone who's retiring to just a house.
Yes.
And it's a lifestyle choice and people are choosing it. Yeah. And it's great. But it is something that you want to be just really, really aware of.
Consider, because if you're thinking here and then as things change, if you're very close to it, just know the HOAs generally don't go down because things get more expensive with time, with inflation and everything else. And, that's just what it is. And so at some point, what used to cost this amount of money is going to cost this amount of money. Well, now your HOA can't afford it, and you have to reassess and do a special assessment. And obviously, it's going to be commuter things where if you need to put new public sewage in and you got to put all those sewer lines in, well, someone has to pay for that, and it's going to be the people that are members of the HOA. That's how that works, So it's life.
Yeah, is the way it works. So, I think all of this boils down to if I can think about what, putting this kind of summing it up, is you need to figure out what's important to you.
Yes.
Right? What was important? How do you live your life? What store are you going to?
Mm-hmm.
Where our two grocery stores in this area are Kroger, Publix. Like, which one's your store? Like, do you have that close to you? Is that what you want to have close to you? Do you shop Target or Walmart? Right? Mm-hmm. What kind of person are you? And is that one close? The age-old debate. You're going to love this one. Starbucks or Dunkin'.
Right? Well, there's only
people
one.
Have
yeah.
One clear answer, right?
I can walk to my and I don't know about you, so
Yeah, right. But it was something that we talked about in your
yeah,
home search, right? Like what? Oh, okay, they're Duncan people. Let's make sure that
yeah,
there was one close enough, or something similar. And so when you think about it, sometimes I tell people to let your retail do the shopping. Are you a Target person or a Walmart person?
hmm
Well, whatever's in that area, those are the people that you're around. Like,
hmm
you just need, you can sometimes let your shopping kind of dictate where you are. If you look around and you don't recognize anything, then you might want to double check where you are. It could just be a difference in the area you're moving from, that things are different, but it also might be a sign that you want to keep looking for a different neighborhood. When you look at commercial properties, commercial agents and the larger corporations that do the research behind it, they go really, 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 really specific into census data. And the census data tells them how many cars drive by a day. What is the average income? Is it dual family income? Is it single family
hmm
income? There's so much census data that they pull before they put in the shopping centers, before they put in these large box stores. I'd encourage you to take a second and look around and make sure that the commercial side of what you're doing fits your lifestyle, or the lifestyle you want, because that makes a big difference. And they've already done a ton of research. You could just piggyback on it, use all their hard work to make it make sense for you.
yeah, awesome. So I got a thing for all of our listeners. I'm real curious as to which one of these values you think is the most important to you. So I would love to see comments down below. Let us know which one of these is like when you're looking for a house. Which one of those do you look for you personally? What do you weigh heaviest? I'm curious. Obviously, don't say location because all of these involve location. So I just want to see what you guys have in mind and where that comes across. I just want to also tell everybody that next week is going to be our last episode of season 1. So we're
Woohoo!
going to do a wrap up episode of like the best things from each of our 20 episodes, or 19 episodes, because it will be our 20th episode. We're going to take a little bit of time off and record some more for you, and we'll be back in a few weeks. But hopefully everyone's enjoyed season 1 of the Road to Real Estate podcast. We'll see you all next week with our greatest hits of season 1. I don't know what you want to call it yet, but
That's funny. Yeah.
so everyone take care. We'll see you on the
Hey,
other.
have a good week. Bye, guys.